A river is already forcing its way through the tunnel when the wrecked subway becomes the only thing slowing it down. Water punches through the first carriage, throwing passengers across seats and turning every broken window into another entrance. This is no ordinary leak. The train is acting like a temporary cork, and the pressure behind it is still rising. The first warning moves through routine channels, where a damp tunnel still looks like a maintenance problem instead of a city emergency. That delay matters because the damaged section sits under the river, leaving far more water above it than the pumps can handle. The disaster begins with water appearing where the tunnel should be dry, long before the morning train reaches this section. By the time the system understands the scale, a packed train is already committed to the same underground route. A maintenance worker sees the wet wall, but the tunnel remains open while the source of the water is still uncertain. The visible seepage is only the symptom. Behind the lining, pressure continues building across a much larger damaged area. Morning service keeps feeding passengers into the line, increasing the number of people who will reach the tunnel before it closes. Inside the cars, hundreds of passengers have no reason to know that the tunnel ahead has started changing around them. The crowd leaves almost no room to move, which means any sudden stop will turn standing passengers into a human pileup. Once the doors shut, the crowd is committed. The driver controls speed, but only the control room can clear the route ahead. The train continues at normal speed because the driver has not received a clear order to stop before the damaged section. Ahead, darkness and spray erase the distance the driver needs, while the rails carry the train directly toward the breach. The warning arrives at the worst possible moment, close enough to reveal the danger, but too late to create braking distance. Sparks begin tearing across the tunnel walls. The driver can brake, but there is nowhere for the momentum to go. Steel wheels lose their guidance as debris and water disturb the track, converting forward speed into a chain of sideways impacts. The first impact throws the passengers forward before most of them even understand that the train has left the rails. Carriages twist against the tunnel, windows break, and the packed interior becomes a moving wall of bodies and metal. Each car pushes into the one ahead of it, concentrating the wreck exactly where the water needs the tunnel blocked. The derailment finally stops, but the survivors are trapped inside damaged cars with no clear route back to a station. Then the second disaster arrives. Water that had been collecting behind the wreck begins forcing itself through the gaps. The front of the surge races down the rails and reaches the train before injured passengers can stand or open the doors. Loose objects become projectiles, passengers are pressed into the floor, and every low section of the carriage starts filling first. The wreck slows the river, but it also traps everyone on the wrong side of the only barrier holding the water back. When the first surge settles, the train is silent enough for survivors to count injuries and search for anyone still breathing. The flood does not need to fill the entire tunnel immediately, it only needs to block exits and destabilize the wreck. A doctor among the passengers becomes the group's anchor, treating the injured while the tunnel continues filling around the cars. Passengers who survive the collision now face crush injuries, broken glass, darkness, and water arriving faster than they can organize. Children and injured adults cannot climb through wreckage quickly, so the group can only move as fast as its weakest passenger. Every injured person creates a decision: carry them and slow everyone down, or leave them where the next surge may reach. Staying inside offers shelter from debris, but it also leaves them inside a steel container that water can lift or roll. Leaving the train means stepping into darkness, damaged rails, and water whose electrical danger has not yet been cleared. The group searches both ends of the train, but twisted carriages and rising water repeatedly turn apparent exits into dead ends. They cannot simply wait above the seats. If the wreck shifts, the remaining air pockets can disappear in seconds. Surface responders still lack a precise picture of which cars are intact, which tunnel sections are energized, and where survivors moved. Above ground, control has lost direct contact with the train and must reconstruct the disaster from broken signals and partial reports. The first system-wide decision is power. Wet rails can kill survivors, but cutting electricity also removes lights and train movement. Water is now visible across the track bed, forcing controllers to treat the tunnel itself as an expanding hazard zone. A normal breakdown can be approached from either station. A flood changes that geometry by making every lower route progressively worse. Pumps can remove ordinary groundwater, but the film treats this breach as a direct river connection with effectively continuous supply. The voltage is ordered off, yet nobody underground can trust that every section is dead until the system confirms it. Inside the wreck, that uncertainty delays escape. A hand on the wrong rail could end the rescue before it starts. The water keeps rising, so waiting for a rescue train becomes more dangerous than entering the tunnel on foot. The survivors open a route through the damaged cars and begin moving away from the wreck in a single group. The group uses the tunnel wall as a guide, staying together because a single wrong turn can separate someone beyond shouting distance. They mark progress by doors, grates, and equipment rather than distance, because darkness makes the straight tunnel feel endless. The rising water also steals body heat. Even passengers without major injuries become slower, weaker, and harder to move. Outside the carriage, the tunnel removes every advantage. There are no signs, little light, and water hides the floor. When the group reaches a higher section, it gains breathing room but not safety. The river continues searching for the same level. Their progress is slow enough that each new rise in water can erase the path they used only minutes earlier. Meanwhile, officials identify the wreck as a temporary cork. If it moves, the river can accelerate through the entire line. That creates a brutal conflict. Rescuers need an open route into the tunnel, while the city needs watertight gates closed. Officials now have to choose which side of the gates to sacrifice, because containment and evacuation demand opposite positions. Keeping one gate open buys time for survivors and rescue teams, but it also preserves a path for the flood. For the people underground, the infrastructure built to stop water looks exactly like another locked wall between them and daylight. The survivors eventually reach barriers built to divide tunnel sections, only to find that steel and mesh now block their escape. With no reliable phone signal, they must force a physical route while surface teams search a network of identical dark passages. The water has changed from an ankle-deep obstacle into a rising wall, pushing the group toward doors and service spaces. The film's officials estimate that the water can climb toward river level, turning every low chamber into a potential trap. By the final phase, rescue depends less on outrunning the flood than on reaching a compartment the next surge cannot immediately fill. When the damaged section gives way again, the final surge removes the time left for careful decisions underground. The search continues after the tunnel goes quiet, because rescuers cannot assume silence means nobody remains behind the barriers. Rescue teams recover the survivors, but only after the gates, the wreck, and the tunnel itself nearly become their tomb.